An introduction to the planets in astrology. Although it is self-evident that the Sun influences our planet, if only via heat, light, and the great bursts of solar emissions, and the Moon, of course, has a great influence through the tides and its clear influence on all things watery, any suggestion that the planets in our solar system could be influential in any way has been rejected, only because the people of our era couldn't understand how it worked. But then they don't really understand how the Moon and Sun work either. They just think they do. But planets are aggregates. See our video on aggregates, and as such will have functions of their own. So it's not difficult to accept that each planet has its own functions. What is more difficult to imagine is that each planet has a mind. In fact, to most it will seem preposterous. But that is only because when anyone mentions mind, we think of our own, not the myriad of possible other types of mind there could be, and are. In much the same way a cell in our body is unlikely to understand that the aggregate to which it belongs has a mind, especially considering the treatment they get, all 37 trillion of them. We as humans kill off ourselves by our actions every hour of every day, yet we seem unable to comprehend we are but little motes in the cells of the galaxy of which we are a part, and our deaths may be as unnoticed and as inconsequential to the mind of the galaxy. Terence McKenna. Nature is self-similar across scale. You understand what that means? It explains why an atom looks like a solar system. Because nature is self-similar across scales. It means that if a certain architectural conceit works on one level, nature will use it on any other level where it seems appropriate. And so, on many, many levels, the same patterns repeat. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if, in the future, we got the equivalent of astrology, but quantumology. Quantumology, where instead of calculating downward from the stars to the context of human state, you calculate upwards from the atom to the context of human faith. Then the mystery and the woo-woo of astrology would just simply disappear and be replaced by an, of course, how could it be otherwise, kind of understanding. The planets in brief. All heavenly bodies, things in the sky, are likely to have an influence, but some, because they are big, visible and relatively close, were always treated as special. The thinking of the ancients was that something the size of an elephant is going to be more influential than something the size of an ant, and something near will have more influence than something far away. It was not a bad rule of thumb for its time, but quantum physics has shown that distance is rather meaningless, so something billions of light years away from us at the quantum level may be very influential. Furthermore, I think astrologers are realizing now that little things can be bolshy too. After all, Ceres, Demeter, created the equivalent of a nuclear winter after Pluto abducted her daughter, Persephone. Each aggregate, heavenly body, was once treated as an intelligence, a god, simply because our ancestors recognized that all aggregates are directed by a mind of their own. And they also accepted it was a mind we cannot compare with our mind, but an organizing principle nonetheless. In astrology, each intelligence represents a collection of primary modes of being, packages of function, and these are themed. Aries, or Mars for example, is a representation of aggression. Venus is a representation of love in all its forms. They are eternal functions, and since everyone has a collection of them, so each intelligence is regarded in astrology like a godparent, bestowing various gifts of personality or function on each entity. Each culture had its own name for each heavenly body, so although superficially there appear to be an overwhelming number of gods, there were not as many major gods, intelligences, as one may think. And in the Earth-centric model described in the videos on the signs of the zodiac and that on celestial music, the planets, meaning the influential bodies in the sky, are the Moon, alternative names Luna, Diana, Selene, Artemis, Sin, Chandra, etc. Mercury, alternative names Hermes, Luke, Buddha, Woden, Thoth. Venus, alternative names Aphrodite, Inanna, Shukra, Freya, Isis, etc. The Sun, also known as Apollo, Sol, Helios, Shamash, Surya, etc. Mars, alternative names are Aries, Nergal, Mangala, Tui, etc. Jupiter, alternative names Jove, Dias, Marduk, Ammon or Armin, Zeus, Thor, etc. Saturn, alternative names Cronus, Ninurta, Shani, etc. More have been added to these 7. Uranus, also known as Celes, Aruna, Uranus, etc. Neptune, also known as Poseidon, Varuna, Mosmorak, etc. Pluto, also known as Hades, Hirak, Yama, etc. And Ceres, also known as Demeter, Bhagavana and Shakti. And the 2 nodes, or 2 shadow bodies, Rahu and Ketu, the North Node and the South Node. But although the discoveries of astronomers are mighty helpful in establishing what bodies are out there, from an astrological point of view, it makes things hugely more complex, as astrologers then feel obliged to try to work out what functions they have, and this can only be done by observation, and there aren't enough observations at the moment to come up with any answers, let alone definitive answers. So, for example, in the 21st century, several new planet-sized bodies, including Sedna, Quara, Haumea and Eris, have been discovered, but they have not yet been incorporated into astrology. How an astronomer classifies them makes no difference to an astrologer. If Pluto is classified by an astronomer at one moment as a planet, and just a big rock, in the sky the next, makes not a jot of difference to an astrologer. It won't stop it from influencing things. And astrologers are beginning to accept that maybe sometimes a small rock in a certain position might be having a great deal more influence on Earth than a ball of gas trundling along by its merry self millions of miles away, bothering no one. As such, a whole raft of astrological terminology has arisen to describe the relative positions of planets, all based on aspects. In astrology, an aspect is the angle the planets make to each other in any horoscope, a chart map of the sky. Aspects are measured by the angular distance in degrees and minutes of ecliptic longitude between 2 points as viewed from Earth. And all these aspects are drawn on the chart in the centre hub, using lines and colour coding to indicate their type. Aspects: trines, opposition, squares, and sextiles. Astrologers attach considerable importance to aspects and their interpretation. We have a reference and video link to what we regard as one of the best descriptions of aspects and how to use them, a video by Helmut Licht called Aspects in Astrology. We will very briefly define some of the terminology using his video, but at the end we will look at another way of viewing this, which might help to spark some ideas. A horoscope or astral chart shows the signs of the zodiac round the rim and the planets in the 12 wedges made inside the rim. Only symbols are normally shown. The chart is divided into 12 by spokes going out from the hub of this great wheel. Each wedge is numbered from 1 to 12. In this Earth-centric model, the Earth is the hub. The 12 divisions are called mansions or houses. Houses do have a meaning, but we will leave it to Helmut to explain this. We are going to concentrate on the planets and the pattern in the centre. Remember that this chart describes the night sky on a certain date and a specific time from a specific location. The pattern is specific to these 3 things: place, date, and time. Now we will move over to a blank chart, showing only the symbols for the zodiac signs to introduce some terms. Let us assume our first planet appears where the arrow is. A conjunction is when a planet either aligns with another planet or is next to another planet within about 10 degrees. The semi-sextile, 1/6, is when one planet, blue, is 30 degrees away from the red planet in either direction. The semi-square is when the planet is 1.5 signs removed from the other planet. The sextile is 60 degrees. The square is 90 degrees. The trine, increase the angle to 120 degrees and we get what's called a trine. Trine because it is a third of the circle. Inconjunct, an aspect of 150 degrees, is called an inconjunct or quincunx. Opposition, when 2 planets are exactly across from each other, 180 degrees apart. But there are other, more complex patterns with their own names, and this is when it starts to get more intriguing. For example, the Grand Trine, 3 planets forming a triangle. The T-square, 3 planets, 2 of them forming an opposition, and each squaring the middle planet. the Great Cross, 4 planets in a square or a cross, and also forming 2 oppositions. Joining up all these aspects between the planets, and you get a picture like this, like someone's knitting gone wrong, but a pattern of sorts, and we can start to see that actually it may look a mess, but like people at a party, it is the dynamics of the whole that is important. Patterns, personalities, and the Enneagram. Now we will turn to this diagram. It seems to be showing the same signs of the zodiac round the rim of the wheel, and a composite of different sorts of aspects. This is the type of pattern you get when you do an entire chart for a specific location, date and time. But what have we here? It looks very much the same, with lines and aspects, but this is not a horoscope, it is the Enneagram. The Enneagram is a system of personality typing. 9 types of interconnected personality are used, and its similarity to a horoscope with its aspects is not coincidental, and it is used in psychiatry. The Enneagram, a primer for psychiatry residents, by Morgan Alexander, B.S., Brent Schnipker, M.D., 6th of March 2020. Abstract. The Enneagram is a personality theory describing 9 strategies by which the psyche develops a worldview and relates to self and others. Each of the 9 types has a basic fear, basic desire, and predictable behaviour pattern in times of stress and security, all of which shape motivations underlying behaviour. The Enneagram has been used by psychiatrists since the 1970s. The authors summarise the Enneagram theory, review the history and literature validating its use, and suggest areas for application in psychiatry, including diagnosis and psychotherapy. As the Enneagram becomes increasingly popular, clinicians will benefit from knowledge about the system. And I shall repeat this: clinicians will benefit from knowledge about the system. What does this mean? It means that the patterns the heavenly bodies make, along with the analyses of the personality characteristics the planets represent, and the effect of their juxtapositions, is a valid science and is already in use in medical circles. As such, anyone calling astrology woo-woo or similar is on very dodgy ground. It may be difficult to understand, and indeed the science is exceptionally new, but the study of patterns in the sky, personality types, events and their correlations is of great value. The real challenge is the number of combinations that need to be studied, and the number of observations required, and the difficulty of synthesizing all these observations. But the rewards may be extraordinary. More archetypes, see the video, may be revealed, and far more about the play we are now enacting, see the video, Theatre. This level of understanding should help to remove fear and superstition, and each of us might be able to find out early on what our role in this play is, a real understanding of our destiny and part in the great work. See the Great Work video, and help us live a more rewarding and fulfilling life. How does it work? No one knows, but an analogy may help. The first computers were programmed using things called punch cards or paper tape. Both these had holes punched into the card or tape, which represented instructions or data. In effect, each column was a code which, when taken with the other columns, instructed the machine on what to do. Early machine languages used only noughts and ones, holes or not holes. So we know, because we have the evidence in those early computers, that it is possible to program something using just noughts and ones in a certain pattern. So given that these sky charts do not capture every influential heavenly body, one could imagine that an extremely sophisticated language has been devised using the heavenly bodies as the noughts and ones. Far-fetched? Yes. Bizarre? Yes. Preposterous? Yes. But at times, watching the stars is not unlike watching a computer in action. Perhaps the mad dash of a comet at the last minute may change the whole equation, the course of history. So when anyone pooh-poohs the idea of the heavens influencing the earth, they would be entirely wrong to do so, because the mechanism exists to do it. Manly P. Hall, from his lecture series. When enlightened peoples began to reach out in friendship to the stars, they did not populate the firmament with evil beings, but with great good powers. And they sensed these good powers as forever protective and paternal, and they sensed these powers as contributing continuously to the well-being of every creature that existed. And by the time Egyptian civilization had arisen, we see this universe of which we live strangely charted, mysteriously organised into levels and spheres and departments. There were worlds within worlds, wheels within wheels. Ancient man had this wonderful sense of the nearness of the creative agencies. We've lost this, because man finds nearness only to his own kind, or the strange, complicated world which he himself has fashioned. Man's become a highly neurotic creature. Some psychologists like to tell us that ancient man was also neurotic. Well, he probably was to a degree, but had he been as neurotic as we are, it's questionable whether our race would have survived. But he had a cure for his neuroses. So many beautiful things that we no longer have. Perhaps they were superstitious. Perhaps we feel that we have outgrown them, like the fairy tales of childhood. But whatever it is, we have lost the beautiful. We've lost the sublimity of life. We have blocked ourselves in a world of routine, patterns of mediocrities, which neither satisfy the imagination nor nourish the idealism in our constitutions. The Egyptians and the Greeks did not have a fall in their theology. Man was not driven out of a paradise. Most ancient and most Eastern peoples did not believe man was in an involuntary exile, punished for original sin. Their belief was that man was an adventurer. He went forth to discover the unknown, because such is the nature of man. He wanted the victory that comes from effort, from victory over limitation.